All right, and you're welcome to do any of this stuff with me so that you can, like, especially like this beginning part, just to get the movement down. So I really like using a stick first, and this is a great warm-up as well. So if you're still learning the deadlift, use the stick as your warm-up. So I'm going to place the stick on my back, and I'm going to make contact with the stick with my head between my shoulder blades and kind of like the base of my sacrum. So when I'm here, you're going to see that there is a gap in my lower back. Okay. And this gap, like whatever your natural gap is, should stay roughly the same throughout the whole movement. And this is where most people go wrong when learning the deadlift, is this arch will change. Okay, so we're really just trying to keep the same neutral, your neutral spine throughout the whole movement. So with the stick on your back, so I like to have my hand below and one hand above just to anchor the stick. I'm going to soften out my knees, and I'm just going to hinge from my hips. So I'm going to try to push my hips back. I'm just going to hinge until I feel my hamstrings and then come up. So a lot of people tend to go here and then they keep going, and now the stick is off my sacrum. So this is poor movement pattern. Okay. So just go until you feel that stretch and you've still got really good position. So I like to do, maybe 5 to 10 of these, and I don't really mind like how far you go. If you've got like good flexibility, you can keep going. You can bend your knees more. Okay, so the key point here is keeping all 3 contact points on the stick, maintaining good arch in your spine. Okay, we're not trying to accentuate the spine. We're not trying to go too much into this arch position, just whatever is neutral for you. Okay. So just, going up and back. And if you have a wall, you can actually do this up against the wall without the stick. And just think about sitting back, touch your glutes to the wall, and then come back up. So you will feel this in hamstrings. You might feel it in your lower back a little bit, as long as it's more muscular and not any strain. Any questions about that so far? Okay, and you're welcome to unmute at any point, because I won't be able to see the chat. Okay, so we've got this pattern. So this pattern can be applied to the deadlift, to the Romanian deadlift, which looks more like that hinge that we were doing with the stick. So deadlift is more knee bend. Romanian deadlift, the knees stay roughly the same position, but you're hinging more. And then there's the stiff-legged deadlift, where I keep my legs straight and I hinge forward. Okay, but it's the same back position in all 3. All right.
Is there any benefit to one particular style?
Yeah, so the regular deadlift, when you're like here, you're going to recruit just all the muscles in your body. A Romanian deadlift, when I bend my knees and I hinge, that's more glute focused. So it's a really good one if you want to build your glutes. And for the stiff-legged deadlift, that's going to be hamstring. So if you want more hamstring strength and even lengthening, that's a good one to do. And the bar position, there's different types. So you can go here with any of them, even Romanian deadlift. So this is a good morning. This is the hardest version. Okay. Otherwise it's here, or even stiff-legged deadlift. And the last version is searcher. So you hold the stick like this or the bar like this. I really like this version because it recruits the core a little bit more. Okay. You won't really see good mornings in any of my programming because I think it's a harder position to learn, and you could easily overload that position. So I don't think I'll ever really program the good morning. Okay. Any other questions for that? Okay, so so on the squat rack, let me see the spotting arms. Okay,
Mercedes,
yeah,
I just wanted to chime in with maybe a defense of the good morning, but
Yeah.
that's a personal opinion.
Yeah.
I have never done a very heavy good morning, but I really, really like them as a warm up for a traditional deadlift to do it pretty
Yeah.
light.
Mhm.
So and I think you could do any of those versions. But usually I do the classic bar on your back, and I just feel like it really helps kind of wake up my hamstrings, which tend to be kind of cranky. So with a little bit of weight, whether it's usually just an empty bar, so 35 to 45 pounds, I love that, and I think the risk of injury from that, presuming that you've figured out how to do it correctly, is pretty low. So just so it's not like you have to put an enormous amount of scary weight on your back, like you can do other versions that are I think quite useful.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Yeah, and even just the stick, like if you're just learning how to do the movement, you can just use a stick to do the good morning. Yeah, and you're right, and it does load the spine nicely as well. Okay, so on the squat rack, we have these are called the J cups. Okay, these hold the bar for squats, front squats, bench press, whatever. You have the spotting arms. Okay, I put this at the very lowest position. The spotting arms are really there to catch the weight if you make a mistake, like you have to bail out of a squat or you have to bail out of a bench press. The spotting arms are going to catch the weight and you can kind of like shimmy out of it. So basically all squat racks have the J cups and the spotting arms. So we're going to use the spotting arms as a way to transition from a high deadlift into a lower deadlift. So I actually started with this and did this for maybe a month because I had lower back issues, and this was a great way to load up really heavy. Like I could lift a lot heavier from a higher position than a lower position. And I actually talked to Steve Bechtel about this. He actually prescribes an elevated deadlift for a lot of his athletes just because of the fact that you can load it up so much more than from the ground. And when it comes to strength training, the more load you can put into your system, the better it's going to adapt to the strength. So the one caveat is that you miss out on that range of motion going a little bit lower. Okay. So there's like a give and a take with that. So if you ever feel like you want to just load it up and feel what it's like to lift really heavy, you can start with an elevated position. Okay. So I am starting with, let's see, I don't know if you can see my knees, but you don't have to start this low. You can start even higher. You can start with the bar above your knee if you want. Right now, the bar is just below my knee. All right. Start as high as you need to. Okay, so for the foot position, for the conventional deadlift, the heels are going to be roughly under the hips, or it could be a little wider. This is going to be really up to your like hip anatomy. Don't force a position. So don't try to like keep your toes facing forward if it doesn't feel good. So play around with like how wide. You don't want to really go more than 45 degrees out to the side. Okay, because if once we do that, we start working different muscles in the legs, and we're really just trying to keep everything relatively balanced in the system. So knees slightly out, sorry, toes slightly out, and again, like play with the width. So what I like to do is like jump, and then whatever position my feet land in, that could be your optimal position. Okay. So to start with, so I think about the stick on my back, I'm gonna approach the bar and my knees are actually touching. I've got contact with the bar. Okay. So from here, I'm gonna envision that stick on my back and I'm gonna hinge back, thinking about pushing my hips back like I'm touching the wall behind me with my glutes, and I'm gonna reach down. So now the width of my hands, you have to have enough room for your knees to be on the inside of your hands, okay? Some people like the sensation of touching their knees on the inside of their forearms. Others might not, and you can go a little bit wider. Okay, so this is gonna be really up to you. On the bar, there's a knurl mark. I like to go thumb width from there. Okay, so if there's a mark here, I'll just measure from my thumb out, and then I'm always consistent with how far I'm gonna be from that knurl mark. Okay. With a Romanian deadlift, the hand position is going to be a little different, and we can go over that if there's time at the end. Okay, so foot position, hand position. So walking up to the bar, hinging back, reaching for the bar. So once you're here, the back position or your shoulder position has to be very, very strong. So if you're not engaging through your shoulders, then the bar is going to pull the shoulders forward, and then it could create this cascade effect of rounding the spine as you lift the bar up. So you really have to engage the shoulders. And I love this cue. You essentially envision orange underneath your armpits, and you squeeze the oranges. So it's like you're trying to juice those oranges so that you really stack the system. That cue has worked the best out of all of them. So coming up to the bar, hinge back, grab the bar, and then squeeze those oranges. And when you do that, you should feel full engagement of the lat, okay? And your shoulders will be they won't be down a ton, and they're not gonna be up. They're gonna be kind of neutral in the shoulder socket, okay? So once I squeeze those oranges, I've got this really strong position, and it's gonna lock my upper back. So you're gonna see, if I don't lock it, this is what my shoulder position looks like. And if I do the squeezing of the oranges, all right, so it locks my whole spine in. All right, so from there, I'm just gonna pick the bar straight up and think about squeezing my glutes at the top. Okay, and then I'm gonna just come straight back down. So you can just practice the squeezing the oranges and lift, and then put the bar back down. So this is 65 pounds. I like a little bit of weight on here to give me more feedback in the system. I would suggest that you actually start with a lighter bar, or just the bar, like a 45 or a 35-pound bar. Okay. So once you've done that a couple times, squeeze the oranges, pick it up, back down. Okay, so that's step one, is lifting the bar up. Now putting it down. This is where it can get really tricky. When I coach clients, I tend to see the end of the bar do a lot of movement back and forth. And really what we should see is the bar moving straight up and down, okay, without any movement forward or back. So when you take a video of yourself doing the deadlift, it's good to look at your shoulder position, back position, but also what is the path of the bar? Is it going straight up and down, or do you see it go whoop, whoop, whoop around your knees, or even like back on your hips? All right, so we want to avoid that. So what I like to do is think about pushing the bar back into my thighs first, because what that does is push my hips back. So I'm gonna push my hips back and then go straight down from there. So I'm gonna set up, squeeze the oranges. Up at the top, I'm squeezing my glutes. I'm gonna come back ever so slightly. It's not a huge movement. And go straight down. Okay. So this would be wrong, is a really, really big movement. So now the bar is really shifted back and then it has to come forward. Okay, so we want to avoid that.
I have
Questions so far?
I have a few questions. So I've always struggled to deadlift from the floor, so I'm really excited to see this elevated version. The
Yeah.
way I've gotten around that is to use, I think it's called the hex bar. So
Yes.
it's like, so what's the difference between doing like using that bar versus, I mean, I know it's a little different hand position and the elevated, but I noticed like with the hex bar, I was actually able to get more of the position that you're demonstrating.
Yes.
So I was wondering about the hex bar and like, is it good? Is this elevate, like what the difference is? And then also how long do you pause before you start to lower the bar?
Okay. So the hex bar, actually a lot of my one-on-one clients have started to just transition them over to the hex bar because it is way more approachable because of those reasons you just listed, like you're able to get into that position. So really, like, if the goal of our strength training is to lift heavy things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't mind if the trap bar is easier to use, you should definitely use that. It does, so you're able to sit back a little bit more. You're not going to lean forward. So there's less tension on the hamstrings and maybe even lower back.
Okay.
With the hex bar. So that is the benefit, is that you don't have to lean forward as much. And depending on your limb length, so some people have really long legs, short torso, or the opposite, the bar may feel better or the trap bar may feel better. So yeah, play with it. I really, really like the trap bar. Okay. And then your second question was, like, at what point do you start to lower?
Yeah.
I like to, okay, so let's talk about the breathing pattern, because the breathing pattern is going to dictate how long you stay in the upward position. All right. So in a deadlift, I like to do 2 breaths. 1 breath to pick it up, 1 breath to put it back down. So it's an inhale, hold, exhale. Inhale, hold, exhale. The hold for all lifts, you should actually be holding your breath during the hardest part of the movement. Okay. And especially when it gets really, really heavy, when you hold, that's great because you're not losing position in your core and you're activating your core so much more. So this is going to sound a little funny, but you're going to make a noise when you exhale and even when you inhale. So what I want you to do is put your hands on your belly, because you're going to like actually feel this. This is how I'm going to sell this to you. So I want you to just inhale nice and relaxed. And you should feel like your diaphragm's pushing out against your hand. Okay, so now I want you to inhale through your nose, but it's almost like you're sniffing some cocaine really quick. Okay, so that visual, put your hands on your belly and go. So there would likely be a slight activation through the abs, the upper abs. Okay, so you're going to do that. So it's an inhale. That's how you're going to inhale. Okay, it's through the nose. So the second part, so now just exhale in a very relaxed manner. Out the mouth. As opposed to, you're going to make the noise TSS. Boom, we've got a ton of engagement in the abdominals. when you make that noise. So now you combine it, you go inhale. The whole time the core is engaged, and that is our goal. Okay, and you can use this for any heavy movement. When you've got a lot of reps and the weight is like moderate, you're not going to be really doing that breathing pattern until maybe by the last 2 reps when it gets really, really challenging. Okay, so don't think that you always have to do this. It's more like when it's really heavy. So I'm gonna come up to the bar, push my hips back, squeeze the oranges. So I'm gonna do my inhale, hold, inhale, hold. So the coordination of the exhale is going to be up to you. So I can't tell you the exact timing. It's more based on what is the, let's see, you will exhale kind of right at the end of the heaviest part of the lift. Okay, you're going to feel it. It's going to feel pretty natural. Once you practice it, you're going to know, oh yeah, this is when I'm going to exhale. Okay. So sitting up, inhale. So that now I'm probably going to spend at least a second up here to reset. Okay, so just working on that breathing pattern is going to be really, really nice to activate the core. Questions about that? Okay, so you can also do this on the front squat. So you're here, you inhale, but you only do 1 breath. So that's where this is different. Okay, so it's inhale. So I'm holding my breath through most of the compression in my core. All right, so the deadlift is really the only one I would say that I take 2 breaths. Okay, any lifting motion that I have to like really focus on. Okay.
So Mercedes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. So on the squat, I've been doing like a 2-second hold at the bottom of it. So go down, 2-second hold, and come back up to try and just what I've been learning the motion. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're doing that, would you suggest just holding your breath throughout the duration of that, or would you suggest doing 2 breaths if you're having that little isometric hold at the bottom of the front squat?
That's for the front squat.
Front squat.
I guess it depends on how heavy it is. If it's heavy, I would hold your breath the whole time and try not to spend too much time down there. But if it's pretty light, if you're like, cool, I'm just like working on the motion, then you could do 2 breaths. But I don't think I've really ever done that, like the holding at the bottom with the weight. You can.
Okay.
That's like tempo. You can do tempo training. So just, I guess, like, you're going to have to use your best judgment on that. If you need core stability, hold your breath. If you don't need extra core stability and you can just do it with exhaling,
yeah,
that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It was
more
meant
about
to be just.
it's protecting the spine during the heavy part. Yeah.
Okay, because I figured that if once you're at the bottom and you've got everything is contracted and in place, you can then take a breath whilst your muscles are doing their work and then come back up again, was what I was thinking. Because it's not super low, it's not super heavy loading. It's actually just about teaching myself the motions. After we talked about this, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, right? In the like gym beta.
Yeah. Awesome. Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah. I think that's totally fine. Okay, so now let's look at it from the ground. So again, like up to you, you can start you can start with the bar as high as like mid thigh. You're gonna get something out of that. So even just, they're called mid thigh pulls. So Olympic athletes do that a lot to generate a ton of force at the top of their motion. So if you want to start here and then slowly make your way down. Oh no. The trash guys are here. Let me just mute for a second.
Mercedes, I just wanted to comment. I can't hear the trash guys, so it might be something where your microphone's
Really?
actually not picking it up super hard.
That's
I don't know if
amazing.
anybody
Oh.
else is true.
That's okay, then great. Let's keep going. As long as you can hear me. If you can't, just like yell at me.
Cool.
All right. So anyway, yeah. At your own pace, start to make your way down. When you use when you do deadlifts, make sure that you use the bumper plates because it's gonna elevate the bar. That's actually one of the biggest mistakes I see beginners do is like they put the small plates, you know, they use these metal plates and it's so much lower on the ground and you don't actually need to start that low. So use the bumpers, but also, you know, they're made out of rubber, so they're gonna bounce. No one likes the sound of metal hitting the ground either every time you set the bar down. All right, so the bumper plates are gonna be, that's really meant for deadlifts, Olympic lifts, because you can just throw the weight down. All right, so make sure you use the bumpers. All the bumpers are the same size. I believe the 10s might be a little bit bigger. One of them are a little bit bigger so that it's easy to slide the other ones on. But yeah, so use this. Some gyms have like plastic, they're like maybe half a pound as practice bumper plates. So if you're not ready to move up to a 65-pound bar, because that's what this technically would be, you can use those practice bumpers. All right, so from the ground. All right, so let's see. Ooh. Okay. So I think the video that I tend to put in for y'all for the deadlift is this guy who's very excited about deadlifting and he really talks about this bottom position first. Okay, and it is like I chose that one because that bottom position is very, very important. So if you're starting from the ground, you want to walk up to the bar. So don't ever like pull the bar to you. So if possible, walk up to the bar so that your midfoot is in line with the bar. All right. So your shins shouldn't be touching. All right. So roughly midfoot. So as you reach down, notice that my knees are actually going forward. And now I've made contact with the bar and my shins. Okay. What we don't want is for you to go down and now the bar moves forward. Okay, so that would be wrong. So make sure that you've got a good position. And if you're like, oh man, the bar is actually further in front of my midfoot, you can try to turn your feet out a little bit more. And that might create a little bit more space for you to reach down. And again, like as your thighs change position, you are going to change what muscles are worked, but don't stress about that too much. Okay, so walking up to the bar, midfoot in line with the bar, I'm going to reach down. So, and now you can't see my hips. Okay, so now you've got that foot position. All right, so the key thing here, so I'm going to get into my position here, squeezing the oranges. So hopefully my shoulders are above my hips and my hips are above the knee. That would be the deadlifting position. A lot of people tend to come up to it, and then the shoulders and hips are at the same level. So this would be more of a Romanian deadlift, okay? So works a different muscle group. Again, it like works more of the glutes. So we wanna stick to dropping the hips a little bit more. Okay, so my chest is gonna be up a little bit higher. I'm gonna inhale. Okay. One thing I should mention is the weight in your feet. So if you are setting up, this is another common mistake. You're coming up into the bar, setting those oranges, and then you kind of lean back a little bit. That can be a really good cue to initiate activation in your glutes. But what happens is you can like pull back and it's like too much leaning back. I prefer kind of midfoot, weight in more in the midfoot than on the heels. Okay, can initiate better movement pattern. Some coaches do say push through the heels. I prefer just to spread the floor with your feet. Spread the floor. Okay, so that could be a good cue for you if you're having trouble weighting the midfoot. All right. So I think that's like, those are kind of like the basics of lifting from the ground. When you're videoing yourself, if you notice that your hips come up first, and then your back, probably means that your glutes are a little bit more, like they're probably stronger than your quads, which is why the trap bar deadlift is actually good, because you can actually use more quadricep in that movement and train the quads up to be as strong as the glutes. So that's just something to think about. So if you ever notice that, I tend to have that issue where I push with my hips first and then I hinge. I think just because I prefer that movement and my glutes are way stronger than my quads. All right. Questions or comments or things that people want to add? No?
This is kind of, I don't know how to really phrase this, but so one thing that I'm working on is that I have kind of like rounded shoulders, and this is from many things, including computer work and just my anatomy. And so sometimes I think what I've struggled with the standard deadlift, not like the trap bar one, is that it almost never looks right because I just have like this rounding in my upper back that I have all the time. And I get like super self-conscious about it, and I'm not sure if I'm like cueing correctly. And I think that's one of the reasons I like the trap bar, because then I get that nice line. It's like I don't know. It's just so I don't know what my question is, but like if you're seeing rounding in the upper back on either of these, like how do you know if it's like you're not cueing correctly versus like, well, this is just what my body looks like right now. You know, like I want to, I don't want to like get in my head over a little bit of like a rounding of the upper back because it's just there and I'm working on it and it's just, you know, but I also know that sometimes when your upper back starts to, you know, if you get like that cat thing going, that's not good in a lot of positions. So it's like, I just get confused about like what's normal for me versus what's bad cueing.
So because you can get a really nice line in the trap bar, I wonder like whether that's actually more of a cueing. And again, like, there's no bad position. It's sometimes just bad application. So if you have like a not optimal position and you're lifting really, really heavy and you've never done that before, there's that higher risk of injury. But if you're really accustomed to doing good, like trap bar deadlifts, let's say you're like really good at that, and then you really load it up, and then your spine rounds slightly as you lift it up because it's so heavy, that's okay, because you know that movement. So mostly like, don't stress about like good or bad movement. yeah, think more about that cueing. And another cue is, so you've got the oranges.
Mm-hmm.
See if it. So here, if I'm squeezing the oranges, I'm essentially pulling my arm into my side and I'm rotating. So if I didn't have the bar, this is what it would look like. So it's that trap bar position.
Mm-hmm.
My hands would end up in this neutral position. Okay. So if I'm holding the bar, another cue that people use is break the bar. So it's like you want to bend the bar this direction. And that might help set your shoulders.
Cool.
Okay. I don't love break the bar too much because like it does tend to tweak my wrist. Like I overdo it. So I really like that squeezing the oranges more. Okay. But have it as your backup. All right. The breaking the bar, that cue is actually really awesome for bench press. Okay, that works really well. So yeah, I would say like I have a guy who he actually has some scoliosis, and so his back is like kind of like rounded, but we're really like, as long as you're engaging through the back and you feel this engaged, you're probably doing it right.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I wonder if maybe I was just, when I've tried the regular bar, is I've just been loading it too heavy. Like I
Yeah.
haven't gotten the movement on that style down.
Yeah.
And then I tried to load it too heavy, and then it was just like not great. But with the trap bar, I don't know, for some reason it makes more sense to me. And I think I started lighter because it just, I don't know, it's like more accessible, but then in some ways, like, because you've got that like quad thing, you know, your legs also have to be able to handle it. So I think when I started with the trap bar, I probably like didn't load it that heavy.
Yeah.
And maybe just got the movement like cued in better. So yeah, I'll play around with both. But yeah, it's
and
good to know.
it is true that like, especially like as you get heavier and heavier and you film yourself, if you notice that there's a break in your shoulders, like you pick it up and your shoulders just go, they come forward. So you lift it up and then all of a sudden you're doing this, like, okay, now I actually don't have the strength in my shoulder to hold the bar. The rest of my body can handle it, but my shoulders can't. So you just like adjust to what you need.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
I had a comment on that. I sometimes deal with shoulder pain during deadlifts, and there's something that I've done pretty heavy for many years. And what I'll get is kind of like a burning sort of nerve pain down the back of one of my traps. And usually what that means, I think Mercedes's, point about cueing, is that I'm not rotating my shoulders correctly. Like, I'm getting lazy and it's heavy and I don't wanna, engage all the way. And so like in your case, Carissa, like, in addition to how it looks in your video, just be really alert to the sort of cue from your body, like, oh, I'm getting pain in my shoulders, and it might not be the same pain that I'm getting, right? It could be something different, but like, how do my shoulders feel? Do I feel like they are aligned correctly or not? Do I, get weird twinges, whatever. And I would actually also suggest that like, if a trap bar works for you to do deadlifts, use the trap bar. It's fine. Like you're still going to get the benefit. What may be useful with the sort of traditional style without the trap bar, like when you load it, it's showing you, because, you might have weird shoulder feelings. It's showing you that you have, like, you can work on that strength. So it's not that it's too heavy for you necessarily. It's like actually a really useful feedback of, oh, I should work on this no matter what bar position I'm using, no matter what type of bar, like this is exposing a weakness of mine that is really good to know about. So that's just like a different framing of, the feedback you're talking about.
Yeah, totally. And I think too, like, when I started doing deadlifts, it was a few years ago, and it was before I started doing climbing. And I think climbing has now, or is gradually curing me of being like I don't know, just kind of self-conscious about starting really like at the lowest level of something. So, I think that there is like room for me to play around with the sort of the standard setup because I think I'm like, just better at following the total progression of something now because of all that climbing's done to me.
Yay.
all the ways it's broken me out of, any delusions that I can start at an intermediate level on something versus like, no, get the movement down and then progress. So
That's
yeah,
right.
like this is really helpful. But yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to like go back and try both variations and see where I'm at.
Yeah, Gloria, that was awesome. Thank you for that input. Really, really nice. And like so what, two summers, not last summer, the summer before, I had a really bad lat shoulder issue. And that's when I hired Natasha Barnes, because she's a power lifter and she's a PT. I'm like, great, you're the person I'm going to go to reintroduce deadlifts. And I used the stick with my light weights as a starting point. So, and I had been deadlifting for many years prior to that. So it is just meeting your body where it's at and meeting like your motor patterns, because especially as you get injured, your motor patterns will change to compensate for what's happening. So yeah, I love that you're letting that go, Carissa. That's awesome. Yeah. One thing, so with the shoulder position, I'm wondering if I can like, nope, this way. Okay. So the thing with scapula, I think a lot of people think that they need to do that. So that's scapula retraction. Okay, so that's pinning the scaps together. Okay, this is protraction. So I'm trying to push the scapula away from each other. Elevation, and then depression. So when you're setting, so now I'm gonna like do the orange squeeze. So when I do that, this is very different to that. Okay, so when I squeeze the oranges, it's a slight retraction with a feeling of depression, but not really. It's almost like a in between of like I'm just contracting the muscles in that position. So once I rotate, if I just rotate my shoulders back, so I'm not retracting, I'm just rotating and then squeezing. That would be the shoulder position. Because I think a lot of people think they have to be back here when they're doing it. And that's really hard to do. And you're not activating the lats. So if I do that, I don't know if you can see like my lats right here, and it turns on right away when you rotate. Okay, so that's one thing to feel. It should be right through here and not in the middle of the scapula. Okay.
Does that apply to dead hangs as well? Same for activating.
Yeah, you're not trying to do this, because I think you and I talked about this. Like sometimes, like I think some of the videos you sent, it was like that. We're not trying to do that. It is more of this rotation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. It's setting the head of the humerus into the socket. Yeah.
Setting the head of the humerus into the socket.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Would that be the what about for like a campus board when you're trying to get the retraction, say for like just the feet on drills?
Yeah, it would be the same thing. So if you're here, again, I'm not trying to do that.
Yeah.
It is like this rotation. It looks like, I guess I am depressing here, but I'm thinking more of trying to like get this rotation. when your hand is above and you do a Gaston like this, you want to do that even
Oh.
more if possible. Okay, so rotate. And you can do that just by like turning your hand up and go with the rotation. And for a while, I used to have people do that before getting on the hangboard, like this, reach up, grab the hangboard. Okay, but the activation, tension doesn't have to be at 100%. As it gets really, really heavy, that's when you're really engaging at 100%. But you just have to match your tension to the weight that you're using. Because that's true. In climbing, we're not always under tension. We're relaxed sometimes. Then we're under tension. We're under higher loads of tension. Yeah. Okay, so it's variable. All right, so really quick, let me show you the single variations with the lighter weight. So I prefer single leg variations instead of double when it comes to if you only have like a 30-pound dumbbell. So this is a 25er. Let's see. So you can use two if you want. I'm just going to demonstrate with one. So if I'm going to do one foot is going to be out in front. The opposite hand is going to hold the weight. Okay, so there's a couple different ways you can do this, but I prefer this kickstand deadlift. So the kickstand is literally just like a little point to help me balance. You can also do it with, like, you can maybe hold on to the squat rack if you want and have your other leg off the ground, just to like take out that whole thing of balance, okay? Because that can limit how much weight you use. So I'm just gonna tap my back foot, like, okay, I don't have a ton of weight on here. I'm gonna do the same thing with my shoulders, do that set my shoulders, squeeze the orange. I'm gonna come down and then back up. So I'm still trying to send my hips back. So the deadlift, you will be bending that knee a little bit more. You're going to want to do this because that's how we normally see the deadlift, the single leg variations performed in more of a Romanian position. Okay. Was that helpful? Was that enough information?
Yeah, is that and if it's a kettlebell instead of a dumbbell, does it change anything or is it just the same? Okay.
Yeah. If you're using a kettlebell, still use one hand.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've got a kettlebell, let's say, do you have a 35-pounder?
That's 25.
25. Okay. That's actually a really good time to just work on your deadlift movement.
Mm-hmm.
Use both hands. So
Okay.
the difference would be, I don't have the kettlebells here. My wife took them. She's actually in Denver right now. So actually, let's pretend that this is the kettlebell handle. So the difference would be, you walk up to the kettlebell and your ankles are in line with the handle. Okay, and then you do the same thing. You hinge back, grab it, and you come up. Okay, so from the side, and I'm putting it down between my ankles. Then I'm looking straight up. Set it down between the ankles. Because if you go in front, it's just going to load things a little differently. And in the kettlebell certification, they don't want you to do that either. So just keep it between right here. It's just the safest spot.
Great. Yeah, because usually when I've tried to do with that slightly out front, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
So yeah,
The further out in front, the more it's gonna load
yeah,
your lower back.
yeah, it just doesn't. So
Yeah.
I don't do them. So that's great.
Yep.
And how many reps with a light weight versus how many would you do with, like, say,
Yeah.
the squat bar where you can load
So
it a
since
little
we're
bit?
doing like what 5 reps in the strength, you know, with a 25 pounder, if you're what's cool about the kettlebell, because you can do this, breaking the bar on the kettlebell, you can use your own tension to generate a lot of force. So this is a good time to practice 100% tension when you don't even need it. Okay. And you can stick with 5 reps and it's going to feel hard. Okay. So like, kind of like the tension plank when it's like 20 seconds, but you're engaging everything. It feels really hard. You can do the same thing with the kettlebell deadlift. Okay.
This is great. This is so different than all of the advice that you see about kettlebell deadlifts,
Yeah.
like randomly on YouTube. This is like, yeah,
Yeah.
instead of doing 25 reps of like shitty, like out in front, my lower
Yeah.
back hurts. Yeah, I'm very excited to do 5.
Yeah. 5 is great. So whenever you're looking for kettlebell exercises, I prefer the Russian kettlebell method instead. The company is Strong First. There's a Russian guy who came to the US and started this whole like kettlebell certification, and it is all about tension. That's really all he teaches is tension, and he uses the kettlebells as a method of doing that. So Strong First or Russian kettlebell. I don't know what the C stands for. It's RKC. So those would be like the things you're looking for on the internet, and forget everything else. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome. Was there anything else, friends? Okay, so hopefully this is a really good start. I didn't mention neck position. Just don't try to like crane your neck. A lot of people go like this. So they pick up the bar and they're looking forward. Okay, so that's a big no-no. Keep your head, like your neck, in the same plane as your spine. So if you're here, you're looking down. If you're here, you're looking forward. Okay. Other common mistakes are here, and then the shoulders aren't engaged. This happens, and then you lift it up. Another common mistake is squatting. People squat the deadlift. Okay. Again, we want the hips higher than the knees and shoulders higher than the hips. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I will post this up and enjoy your deadlifts. I'm happy to break down a lot of like our other exercises as well in the coming weeks. This is the kind of teaching I really love to do. So
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. And enjoy the rest of your week. And let me know if there's any other questions about the strength program. Otherwise, just keep chugging along. All right, friends. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.